Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, event professionals across the Arizona Valley. Welcome to Event Ensemble. It is the first. It is the first Thursday of the month and the first and third Thursday of each month. Event Ensemble is online at 9. And then the second Thursday of each month, we are live and in person with our hybrid meeting that happens in Tempe at the Barking Bodega, which, by the way, is a lot of fun. And a huge personal thank you to Pearl, Lady Jewel, who co-hosts that event with me. Because for those of you who don't know, the setup for a hybrid meeting is minimum 1.5 hours. And the property gives me 30 minutes to get it set. So I am like a madman scrambling to get the screen and the speaker and the computer and the lines and the cables and the people and the microphones and everything set for a hybrid meeting in 30 minutes. And so if it wasn't for Pearl, thank you very much, Pearl, I would be lost because nobody would be hosting the online portion while I'm still scrambling at 10:10 to finally get my face on the picture on the line. Okay, so for those of you who have not experienced that and you want to see me frazzled, you should show up on Thursday. All right, welcome everybody. I had, without a doubt, a tremendous experience with the Wedding MBA last week, 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas. If you have not gone once, you should at least do it once. And if you have done it at least once, then you know that it's worth doing it each and every year. It is truly an outstanding show. It reminds me so much of, and it's not Disneyland, so don't get the wrong idea, but like Disneyland, there is so much to see that you can't possibly get it all in one day. So sometimes you have a 2-day and now they have 2 parks and it's a hopper. Wedding MBA is like that because they have a DJ track, they have a planner's track, they have a photographer's track, and even within those tracks, then they have general sessions and there's everything going on. And even with COVID, this place was mobbed. I would bet, and again, I don't know what the numbers are, but the convention center is so huge and the rooms are so large. I would bet they had 5,000 to 6,000 people there if they had one. Because everywhere I looked, there were people. It was wall to wall, nonstop, just feed from the fire hose, content and information. And the craziest thing, I'm doing this track where there's entertainers and there's all kinds of, fireworks and things going on. And you could hear crickets in the room. Nobody's asking questions. Nobody seems to be engaged or interested. And then this guy shows up, Shane McMurray. And I am telling you, I was just blown away. Everybody was at the edge of their seat, listening to every single word and number that this man had to share. And I thought, and they had questions. It's like we had to ask him to go outside the room afterwards because we had to get the next presenter in, and they were still raising their hand and getting in line. And I'll tell you, for nerds in the house, be happy. This man has your number. And I may not get it because I'm the expressive in the room, but I'm here to tell you his presentation was by far one of the absolute best attended and captivated audience that was interested in what he had to share. But before we get to Shane, I just want to be really clear that numbers, well, they can sometimes be confusing, and you can do math and not necessarily get it right. And this is what I mean.
I figure 75% to you, Pon Ma, and 25% divided between the 5 of us. Gida, Crowbar, myself, Tom, and the baby. That makes 5% for each one of us.
Billy, you're cheating yourself. If there's 25% divided among the 5 of you, that's 14% apiece.
Oh, no, listen, Pa. I wouldn't cheat you. You know I wouldn't. Now, look here. I'll show you. Let me rub this out here. And now, 25 divided by 5 is 5. You see, 5 won't go into 2, will it? No. But 5 goes into 25 5 times, you see?
No, you're wrong, Billy. Now, I'm a pretty good mathematician. Now, 5 into 25. 5 won't go into 2, will it?
No.
But 5 goes into 5 once. Now, we didn't use the 2 before, so we bring it down here. Now, 5 into 20 goes 4 times. There you are. 5 into 25, 14.
No, look, Pa. Let me prove it to you now by multiplication. 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25.
Really, I'm surprised you're learning.
Huh?
I'm surprised that you're learning. Now I'll show you. 5 times 14 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. 25. That's it.
No, look, Ma. Look, you're wrong there because I'll prove it to you. We'll put down 5 14s here. 14, 14, 14. There. Now I'll prove to you by addition that 5 14s is not 25. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25. There you are. Better brush up, Billy. I don't want to see you boys cheated.
All right. So now you got it, right?
That was good.
The truth is, if you don't know your numbers, then you think you're running your business, you think you got money in the bank, and so everything is going fine. And then when it comes tax time, you wonder why you can't pay the bills or you can't pay the taxes. Something went wrong. Or you've got a lot of people who are interested in your services, and so that means that you're making bank. But what are you leaving on the table? Or how do you find those people? Shane is here to share his idea of by the numbers. So a real warm event ensemble welcome for Shane McMurray.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks everyone for having me. Wow, that was a heck of a introduction. I hope I can live up to that. So let me share my screen so we can you guys see everything. Yeah, so just a little background on me. I've been doing research for the wedding industry probably since the early 2000s. And I started doing this with my wife when we actually created a paper company back in 2001, where we made paper from scratch. And we basically, I created this whole process for drying the paper, creating pulp, forming the paper, and doing all this stuff. And then we were selling invitations all over the world. And I wanted to understand what the market was in the US. So I went out and tried to look for, okay, well, how many people are getting married and how much do I charge for these invitations? I was already charging initially. Like most of you, I went and looked at my competitors to see what they were charging. And I go, oh, okay, that's probably about right. So I said, okay, so I'll charge that. And then I turn out, oh, I need to really go look at the market and see where the core market is and how much are they charging and how much are they paying? But there was no research out there. So I started doing research in like 2003, collecting data and basically just getting every fact I could about the industry, trying to understand what was happening. And then, there was nothing out there. All of the data from like getting the number of weddings is very fragmented across all the counties. Most of the counties, some counties in some states don't even collect or publish anything. The state has to publish it. Then I found out the CDC is the one that collects all marriage stats and divorce stats. And it just goes on and on and on. There was really nothing out there. So I went out, did extremely comprehensive research by collecting data from multiple people getting married, talking to vendors all over the place. And then we had some family stuff happen and paper business kind of went to the wayside. And basically, I just said, well, if I needed this information, I think other people need this information too. So in 2005, I published my first research on this, and I've been doing it ever since. In 2007, I had to incorporate it as its own business because it pretty much just took off and did its own thing. And so I think probably the most surprising thing about all of this work that I've done is the fact that I thought initially my customers were those that were only going to work in the wedding industry, right? Like, you know, like you guys, you work in the wedding industry. I mean, you do other stuff too, but your focus is also the wedding industry. So I thought all my customers were just wedding industry. Well, it turns out that actually half of my customers don't even work in the wedding industry. They are investors, they're insurance companies, they are people that do valuations for selling businesses, they're lawyers, suing people for different contract reasons. I mean, it's incredible. I have universities that license this data for use with their schools. So it's incredible, right? Like just the journey of doing that. In the 16, 17 years I've been doing this, I've collected probably about 750,000 survey samples from various different, like people getting married, from people that work in the wedding industry, just really trying to understand. I mean, and obviously we went through a pretty significant change in the past 18 months. So I think it was critical to really understand what was happening, not only from a consumer perspective, but from a vendor perspective. And so we could figure out what was happening, like how many weddings were we really going to have this year, and how many weddings we're going to have next year. So if you see this 2.5 million for next year floating around, that number came from me, and it's been published probably. I've had more press from that number than probably any press I've gotten over the years, and the reason is because it's the first time since 1984 that we actually have almost 2.5 million weddings in the U.S. Just so you guys know, 1984 was the highest year of weddings in the United States in our entire history. And ever since then, it's been declining. So sorry to say that, but it's been declining. People just aren't getting married. And they're just cohabitating mostly. There's actually a couple of good studies if you're interested, out of the University of Virginia, something called State of Our Unions. And they do a lot of research around marriage and how cohabitation is the core thing that's happening now on various different things. It's really good study, but you'll get some ideas of what's happening there. So anyways, the thing here is that I want to help businesses understand why data is important, why the market changing, it's constantly changing. You should be aware of the fact that it's changing, and you need to make decisions in your business. If you're doing this as a hobby, I'll just say this is probably not worth it for you. But if you're doing this as a business, you need to understand what's happening in your market, and you need to understand data and information so that you can make better decisions about your business. Otherwise, why are you doing this, right? You're in business to make a profit. And that's at the end of the day, you can't pay yourself, you can't grow your business if you don't make profit, right? That's the only thing that matters in business at the end of the day, really. So I'm gonna cover a couple of topics. This is pretty much the presentation I gave at Wedding MBA. I changed it up a little bit to kind of share some stuff about the Phoenix market specifically, so that so you guys can see a couple things. But we'll just go through this, and then we'll at the end, if you have questions, let me know. Or if we're going through something, you have a question. I don't know what the format is, but if you have a question, let's talk about it. So we're gonna pretty much talk about like, what are the important things you need to understand about the market, why it's important, key stats, and some examples. I want to give you some examples of things I think that you need really to market effectively and understand your market. And then I want to give you a couple of things to take away. I mean, there's tons of things that you should be collecting, but I want to give you a couple of critical things I think are important for you to collect about your customers and why they're important. So let's get through it. So, basically in the 1930s, I don't know if you guys know this, but De Beers, this was like 90 years ago, right? But De Beers put together this campaign that said love was worth 3 months' salary, right? So their whole thing around that is they wanted to, it's probably been the most successful marketing campaign in the wedding industry in general. But basically they're saying you need to spend 3 months' salary on an engagement ring, right? Because that's what love is worth. And so in general, for this 90 years, people have thought about it. It's not quite that way. But the industry itself is notorious for painting this picture that everything is this luxury wedding. I mean, the minimum wedding is $30K, right? Everybody spends all this money, but that's not reality. The reality is that the median spend in the wedding industry is only $14K, and that's across the US. And then people get married in many different ways. As you guys probably know, you've had probably done deals in backyards and all this other. I mean, people get married in so many different places. It's incredible. And they have people contribute and they spend money on things that they don't want to spend money on, right? Like there are subcultures of budget savers. Just go to Reddit and read some of the Reddit stuff. I mean, there are subcultures of people that I want to spend the least amount of money. I did my wedding for $50, right? I mean, you know, this is true. This is happening all over the place. So I want to challenge you to think a little bit differently, right? Like I know we all want to make $1 million per hour, and that would be awesome, right? Like I just need 1 gig, right? And that's it. I'm set for the year. But there's this whole, like, anybody in the luxury space, there is a persona you have to put up, you know, right? Like there's a cost to that, being able to put that persona up to be able to meet the demands of that luxury space. There's also, you know, the amount of work and effort you have to put into that to provide that. Are you making money at the end of the day, right? That's really the thing. And so if you can look at different pieces of the market and go, look, this is why it's important to understand what's happening with your consumer, with your customer, and collect costs and things like that, so that you can look at your products and sales and go, look, I'm making more money by selling this one little thing than I am doing these luxury things. So why aren't you doing more of this right here? You know, change is actually all around us. I mean, we had a humongous change situation happen last year, right? In the past 18 months. But basically what happened is I read a lot of comments from people in our surveys around the COVID surveys we did that said they pivoted their business and they actually made more money by pivoting their business to do other things, smaller weddings, more intimate events, things like that, than they had ever made previously before, right? Because the expectations are changing constantly. The market is changing constantly, right? Like you know, early 2000s, everyone said, oh, there's all this flood of weddings because of the millennials. Well, that never happened, right? Well, then we had the 2008 market crash. That took place, right? And a recession there, so people spent less money. The market is constantly changing. The past 18 months has been incredible, right? Like incredibly painful for some and good for some others. Well, what's going to happen in 1 or 2 years when this 2.5 million, I'll tell you right now, the 2.5 million weddings that are going to take place next year is not demand growth. It is simply just pent up demand. It is not growth in this market. This market is flat and or declining in many places. So what's going to happen in 1 or 2 years, right? It's going to change again. There's going to be pressure. In fact, there's probably going to be a lot more people working in your space because being a DJ is a low barrier to entry business. I hate to say that, but it is, right? Entertainment business is low barrier to entry. So there are going to be a lot of people trying to get into that space. Planning is the worst. Photography is second, and DJ is probably third, or entertainment is probably third in that space as far as cost goes. And barrier to entry is basically how much money does it take for me to get into business, right, in this space. And so you're going to see a lot of competition come in, and it's going to be painful. You're going to be competing with them, and it might not be so much right now because, you know, there's a lot of demand going on. But as soon as that starts to scale down, you're going to start getting pressure on pricing. You're going to start getting pressure on, well, so-and-so said he would do it for whatever. And so it's important to understand where you're making your money so you can make better decisions about what's happening. You know, the most successful businesses in the world actually use data to grow their business. Large companies, they use data constantly to make decisions about what they're doing so that they can grow and scale their business to what they need to do. And honestly, you guys should be doing that too. I mean, I know this is a creative industry. I get that. I totally get it. But like I said earlier, you're also in business to make money. And if you're not in business to make money, you're doing this as a hobby, that's fine. That's cool. But at the end of the day, if you are in business to make money, then you need to understand, you need to use data. I mean, how many of you guys are using like a Fitbit or something to count your calories or steps? You're already using data there, right? How many are you using, you look at your social media posts and you go, oh, how many likes did I get, right? Or how many people commented on this thing? You're using data there to make decisions about how you feel, right? My daughter, who is 27, if she doesn't get someone liking her post in 5 minutes, right, that post is gone. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it's crazy, right? It's like, I'm like, why didn't you delete that? It was a great picture. No, I didn't like it. I'm like, oh my God, really serious? So we're making decisions about data already, how many likes we get or how many comments. So you're using the data already to make decisions. Why wouldn't you also use data to make decisions about how much money you're going to be making, right? You should be. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of understanding your market. I'm going to give you some examples about things that these are just businesses and examples I've come across recently and over the years that I think you'll get the idea here. But business financing, how many have tried to go get business financing for your company? Business loan, maybe an SBA loan or anything. Well, there is no way anyone is going to give you any money unless you know exactly what's happening in your market. You need to know how many people are getting married. You need to know how much they spend. And oh, by the way, that's not your market. Just because there's 1,000 people that get married and they spend, let's say $30,000 on their wedding, that is not your market. Your market is a subset of that market because there you have competitors. You offer a different type of product that might not meet every segment within there. Remember, I told you the median spend is $14,000 total for a wedding. So if that's the median spend, I mean, that means half of those people spend more than 14,000 and half spend less. So is your market the less? Okay, well then that's of the 1,000 weddings, that's only 500 weddings, right? And of that market, I only focus on this particular slice. Okay, well that's only 250 weddings, right? Or maybe it's only 100 weddings. Is that sustainable for your business? So that's what you're going to need to know when you go to get business financing. What's your plan? Who are your competitors? What's happening in your space? Is it growing? Is the market growing or is it flat? And that all of those things are going to help determine whether or not they're going to give you money or not. Does that make sense? You guys got that? Starbucks recently, basically, everybody knows who Starbucks is, but I read an interesting article about Starbucks that I thought was intriguing because it means that they're in tune with what's happening in the market. So for the last 40 years, basically Starbucks has tried to create a product, an experience where you go in and you sit inside their cafe and you drink coffee and you eat pastries and you hang out and you socialize. They basically, their whole thing is they wanted to be the third place that you go to hang out. That was their whole concept. They basically did this based on like bars, espresso bars they saw in Italy. So that was their concept. And if you notice, if you've ever been into a Starbucks, the whole thing is, I'd say pre-COVID, the whole thing was basically set up for you to go have an experience, sit down, they offer free Wi-Fi. I mean, the whole thing is for you to spend time in their space. Well, so pandemic happens, right? And, so no one's going into Starbucks to hang out and drink coffee. So guess what? They had to they had to think a little bit differently. But what they realized is that people were still going to buy Starbucks coffee. They actually realized that they could do mobile orders and they could do drive-through. And that's how they actually survived through the pandemic. Now they ended up closing some stores, but and the reality is that they just do drive-through and then they do mobile orders and people come in and pick it up. So they have a couple of new concept stores that they starting up in Manhattan where they're basically setting it up like, so Amazon has these new, I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but basically you can go into the store and you can buy stuff and you don't have to go through a cashier. You basically just walk out and everything gets scanned and you get billed, right? So they're doing this new concept for a Starbucks store to do the same thing. You order mobilely, you go pick up your stuff. They have stuff on shelves and you can basically get whatever you want and walk out of the store. You don't even stay. So what they want to be now is the place where you go and go on your way to go wherever you're going. That's their new concept. That's what they want to be, because they found out that people still bought coffee with the pandemic, right? So my point here is they're looking at the market, they're realizing the shift and the change in the way that people are behaving, and they're going, hey, let's see if we can do another concept and see if that concept will stick and work, right? Gillette. Everybody familiar with Gillette? They make razors, sell razors. So basically back in 2002, Gillette decided they wanted to go into the Indian market in the country of India. And so because they, a lot of hair, men grow beards, large beards, so they have a lot of hair. So they basically created this razor concept that they wanted to introduce into the market. And what they basically did is they failed to do research within the country. What they did is they said, oh, let's just get some people within our region. Basically, they went and got some students from MIT that were Indian, and they basically say, hey, I want you guys to try out this razor and give it a shot and see what you think, right? So that's how they did their initial research. Really not the best way to do it because it wasn't really in the spot, in this location or in the place that was happening. So what happened was they introduced this razor into the market. It's a single blade razor. It was designed to work for people that have thick hair. And so they introduced this razor, and basically it was a complete failure, because what they didn't realize is that people in India, men that are shaving, they actually don't have running water most of the time. In the US, they have running water, right? So when they're shaving, they can just put the razor underneath the water, rinse out all the hair. Well, in India, they use a cup of water, and you can't get all the hair out of the razor in the cup of water. So complete failure, because they didn't realize that's what was happening in that market. And so they spent millions of dollars investing into this thing. Then they had to go back and redo their research. So they literally went back and spent 3,000 hours with more than 1,000 people within the Indian market so that they could design a razor that would work. Now they have the most successful razor in the market, but prior to that, they had no clue because they didn't look at the market and figure out what was going on. So huge mistake by not understanding the market completely, right? They wasted millions of dollars. Anyone buy a house recently or try to buy a house recently? Past 18 months, the market has gone insane, right? Crazy. Well, one of the things that happened was, for the normal person or the average person that would go and buy a house, they basically would come with some percentage of money down, or they would have a contingency on selling their other home or that sort of thing. But what happened in this market was there was huge amounts of people, probably like 30% of the market had cash to pay for the home. And these cash deals were basically raising prices, making them higher, and basically preventing the average individual from buying a home. So investment companies like Zillow, Open Door, there's probably a couple others, were coming in with these, and normal local investors coming in with cash money to buy these homes, raising prices, and et cetera. So basically pushing the average person out, and then they basically convert these and resell them or rent them out. And so there was a company that, and I can't remember the name, but it was an article I read that basically said, okay, we see the market is changing. So the financing market part of this is changing. So what they did is they created a company that would basically go buy the house for you with cash, basically is what they were doing. There's a whole market focused around it. We're going to do a cash deal because cash deals close faster. So if you're selling your home, I don't know if you know this, but if you're selling your home and and someone offers you a cash deal, you can actually do the closing faster and get out, right, quickly. So the cash deal is the way to go in most cases. So those were the deals that were winning. So this business concept was, we're going to go buy the house for cash, and if you use our financing, we'll charge you 2% or whatever on the financing piece. And if you don't use our financing, then we'll charge you 3% on the deal. But we're going to use our cash to go buy the house for you. You just contract with them to do the deal. And so market changing, right? They realized that people were missing out on deals. So they create a whole new business model out of this. The idea here is you seeing the market changing, you understand what's happening in the market, and you make changes within your business model to adjust to what's happening within the market. So let me give you some key examples and basically some things I think you need to market effectively. Number one, I think people miss out on is, what is the geography of your market? This is probably the most important thing you need to understand that I think most people miss out on. What is the geography of my market? Yes, we know we live in the desert. Yes, we know Phoenix is huge, this huge metroplex. It's incredibly huge. I just drove through there like last month, and it was insane. Like, I'm completely on the west side on 303, and I'm like, I can't believe that Phoenix extends way out to the mountains on the other side, right? It's incredible. So we need to understand our geography. So just from a perspective of the US, there are 210 Nielsen DMAs. Nielsen DMA is basically a designated marketing area for television. They have a whole thing that it's used in a lot of marketing stuff. So anytime you do marketing online, you can do DMAs for television marketing, for radio marketing. It's used quite extensively for marketing purposes. And then there are 900 plus metropolitan areas within the United States. There's 3,100 counties. You can read the list here. Lots of zip codes and lots of cities, right, within the US. So for Phoenix, the DMA of Phoenix, which is Phoenix Prescott, according to Nielsen, that's the DMA. There's one DMA. There are 10 counties within the DMA, 239 cities and 509 zip codes. So if you were going to do television advertising, that would be how they would help you segment out where you want to go, right? And I don't know if you know this, but you can do online advertising by zip code. So Google, Facebook, I think Instagram all offer geographical targeting. So if you know who your customers are and you know about them, where they live, if you know what markets you want to target, you can highly target your ads to focus on those zip codes. You can also do all of your SEO marketing stuff on your website to focus on specific cities and things like that. It's incredibly technology today is incredible that you can do this level of geo marketing. You need to understand your geography. So, for example, this is the Metro of Phoenix. Is this your market, right? This particular, just the Metro of Phoenix? Or is your market here, right? Like, you need to understand, where's my market? Where's my geography? Well, how many cities are within that geography? How many counties are within that geography? Where specifically are my customers? One interesting thing I like to do is go to trends.google.com. I don't know if any of you have used this, but one of the cool things you can do with this is you can actually, basically what we're doing here is, let's see if I can annotate this for you real fast. Let's just go. So you can filter by city, right? And so that's what you want to do. You want to make sure you get the city. So whatever city you're in, right? You want to make sure you filter by city. And then there's these categories down here, and you want to make sure that you filter by the category. So weddings, right? You can also do entertainment or whatever you want to do, but weddings specifically, if that's your core focus, I would do weddings, right? And then the thing you want to do is you want to filter, basically, you want to filter by metropolitan area, this specific subregion. It does it by state initially, but I would do this, filter it down to basically the metropolitan area. And what you end up with is you end up with these, and you can filter down in there to different metros, but you kind of end up with this map that shows you interests of where people are searching from, where they're searching from, about interested in getting married in the Phoenix area, right? So basically, obviously, Phoenix #1, right? But I mean, who would have thought North Dakota, right? Or even Minnesota? I mean, I think that makes sense. A lot of people in the Wisconsin area come down to this from winter and stuff. But Tucson, people from Tucson interested in getting married in Phoenix and so forth. So what my point here is, this data and information is going to help you, like, oh, maybe you didn't realize that people were doing that. Now you have a target market, right, that you can go after. And so you say, all right, well, look, I'm going to target Fresno, but I want to target specific zip codes within the Fresno market that might be more criteria towards the type of customer I want to reach, right? That's all. Great way to use this data, right? Actually, let me clear all that annotation. There we go. So market size, we talked about this earlier, but market size really is, what is the total number of people that are getting married within a market, right? How many people within a specific market are getting married, or service whatever product or service that you're selling. For example, if you're doing, maybe quinceañeras, well, how many people do quinceañeras within your market, right? That's the thing that you need to understand. What is the total size of my market? And that's really what that is. What is the total size? What is the total reachable, addressable market for the type of product or service that I want to sell? And then the next thing is demand. So demand is, okay, so there's 1,000 reachable people within that market. But demand is how many people actually buy that service, because in weddings, we know, and even in most event type services, not everybody buys everything, particularly weddings. about 67% of people hire a DJ within the wedding space, not 100%, only 67%. So that means if you have 1,000 weddings within a market, only 670 of those weddings actually hire a DJ. You get where I'm going with this? So what does that mean? All right, well, now there's only 670 is my reachable market. So if you're getting a loan, you need to understand that there are only 670 reachable within that market. And then you want to get down into what I would call segments. And so segments are subsets of people within your demand. So let's say there's 670, but let's say I only want to reach people that spend more than $2,500 on their entertainment. Okay, well, if there's 670 people that buy that service, I guarantee you not all 670 of them will spend more than $2,500 on entertainment. There is a subsegment of that population that will spend on that. So that's what you need to understand. So how many people within that population will spend whatever it is you want to charge? Maybe you want to reach people that are in the sub 1,000 market. Well, what is that? How many people are within that space, right? Maybe you have a product that you want to, that's a DIY product that you sell or whatever it is, right? Whatever it is you're trying to sell, you need to understand the segments within those markets and realize what the size of that segment is so that you go, okay, you have a plan. All right, now I know there's 100 people that are reachable within my thing. All right, so now you have the 100 reachable. Okay, well, how many other people within that segment or how many other competitors are trying to reach the same segment, right? You're not going to get all 100, right? You got 40 other people competing for that 100 weddings within that segment. Is that doable? There's 40 other competitors reaching that. So let's say all total, there are 40 competitors trying to reach 100 weddings. What does that make that market look like for you guys, right? That means you're likely to get 2, 3, 5 out of that. Is that sustainable for your business? Not necessarily. All right. So now maybe you need to create a different product that reaches down. So it's okay to create different products. Maybe you're a luxury provider. I'll give you a great example. So Vera Wang is a luxury provider. Everybody knows who she is for the most part. She sells very expensive dresses. Well, back before, right after 2008, the market crash, she has investors that invest in her business, right? She's a luxury brand. She has private equity investors that are investing in her business. Well, private equity investors come in and go, look, we need to see 2 to 3% growth year over year over year. Otherwise, we're taking our money out. Well, how are you going to do that? There's only so many people within the luxury space that are going to spend $10,000 on a dress, right? Well, what do you got to do? Well, you got to find different markets within the market to grow your business 2 to 3, 4% year over year. So what does she do? She created a product that reached down into the market, sub $1,500, that would go into David's Bridal, basically. And she expanded her brand. She did the same thing with engagement rings. She created an engagement ring product that went into the Zales or Signet jewelers companies, and that was specifically designed for those brands. But it was a sub product of her luxury brand product, right? So that's how she grew. I mean, look at what Coach does and all the luxury designers for the outlet malls, right? Have you ever been to an outlet mall? All that is basically products that are reaching down into the sub markets so that they can continue to grow. In fact, I read an article about Coach, and they were in a lot of trouble a few years ago. Basically, their growth was only coming from the outlet malls. That's how they were growing their business 5, 10% year over year, is because people were just going to these outlet malls and buying all their stuff from the outlet malls. And so that was a big problem for them and a big problem for their equity investors, because that's not where they wanted to see the growth. They wanted to see the growth in the luxury brand model. So that was a big problem for them. Anyways, my point here is that segments within the market, there are lots of, I'll tell you right now, there are huge opportunities within your business. You just have to go find out where they are. Understanding your customer, who you're doing business with, understanding what the market is happening in the market. I mean, you guys are, I'm sure, professional, incredible entertainers. You need to show your work, and you need to create products that you can get out there and provide least expensive for you, like least cost for you, but that reach the market. Anybody familiar with the American Community Survey? So it's basically the survey that the census does every year. It's used for congressional funding. So they use it for anytime you do funding for local offices or for local geographies, basically this is what they use to say, okay, we're going to give you X number of funds because you have this population, et cetera, et cetera. So basically there's about 3.2 million people that take this survey every year. The nice thing about this survey is they have data in here specifically around weddings, or not weddings, but people that get married. There are questions in here that allow me to filter out specifically people that got married within a certain time range. So in the last study they did in 2019, which was the micro data available, not the 2020 data, there was 42,697 people that were recently married in this survey. So I was able to look at that data and I'll give you some stats from it, because I think it's important that you understand the demographics of people that are getting married today. Now, these are very focused on money, but I want you to know that where people, how much money people are making that are getting married today. So there's basically 5 things that I think are the most important thing when it comes to how much money people are going to spend, right? Number 1 is inflation, which is how much is it costing me to live, right? Personal expenses, which is also how much is it costing me to live, or how many things I have put on my plate and how many bills I have, right? How much money do I make? Disposable income at the end. So I have all these expenses, I make this much money, how much disposable income do I have at the end? And then my savings, how much savings do I have? People that buy, I've been doing this for a long time. One of the things I collected probably pre-COVID, 2017, 2018, I wanted to really understand how much of the spend of the wedding was coming from the people getting married. And it turns out that on average, 70% of the total wedding cost is coming from the people getting married. So the bride and the groom, they're spending money on the wedding. It's not coming from the parents anymore. Yes, they contribute on the big stuff, but majority of it's coming from the bride and the groom. So it's important to understand who's paying for it and how they're getting their money. So when I ask them, how are you paying for it? Most of them are paying for it with savings or cash on hand. Yes, people do credit. Yes, people do existing credit and things like that, but majority of people are paying with it cash or savings, right? So it's important to understand that, because that way it makes a big difference in maybe what you offer, or when they put pressure on you for pricing, there's a couple of reasons for that. It's not just that there are a lot of competitors and everybody is competing on price. It's also pressure on them for inflation, their personal expenses, and how much cash and stuff they have on hand. So you need to understand that. So just so you know, the median personal income for people getting married is $32,000. That means half people make more than that, half people make less than that, right? That's only $16 an hour. That means, and 93% of people getting married today make less than 100K. Personal income. When you look at household income combined, once they're married, it's $79,000 is the median income. 64% make less than $100,000. Make sense? The maximum personal income, or maximum household income I could find in the survey was $2.2 million. That's out of 40,000 samples, 2.2 million, 0.75%, which is less than 0.1%, make more than 500K. And literally 0.02% make more than $1 million, right? I mean, that's household income. These are the people that are getting married. This is how much money they're making. So you understand, if you get pressure from pricing, this is one of the reasons why you're getting that pressure. Inflation this year is insane. I don't know about any of you guys, but it's crazy. 6% plus already right now. It's probably going to go up a little bit higher. Certain things are just insane, at least for the next 6 months to a year. I think inflation is going to be pretty high. Once the supply chain starts to settle back in and things start getting working again, I think you'll see that come down. But until then, there's going to be pressure. People are taking advantage of other people, and people are taking advantage of the issues that we have. So they're charging more money, and they can, because people are paying it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Personal expenditures for people that are getting married, basically, personal expenditures in general, this is general population, are up 6.6%. Personal income over the past year is down 1%. Disposable income is also down almost 2%, right? So it's costing me more to live. I have less money left over between how much money I make and how much free money I have. And the personal savings rate is 7%. During COVID, the personal savings rate reached about 35%, which was insane, right? Like, no, I mean, it makes sense. No one's spending money, right? No one's going anywhere. They're not spending any money. It's all on Amazon, all online, right? Streaming services. But savings rate went extremely high, but it's back down to about 7.5%. So that's pretty normal. Most people save about 7% of their income, and they put that in some type of either an investment account for, you know, future retirement savings or personal savings for emergency funds, etc. But it's important you guys understand this stuff. So critical information, I think you need to collect from your customers. And why? The most important thing I think everyone needs to collect is mailing address. If you don't collect their mailing address, you're missing out on huge opportunities, because the mailing address allows you to understand where they live, what neighborhood they live in, and get all the demographic data about that neighborhood that they live in. So what does that tell you? If you took the samples from your last 100 customers and you looked at all the zip codes, and then you collected the demographics, the general demographics of those zip codes, you would come up with averages around how much money they make, what type of work they do, what is the core age of that population, their race, all kinds of things about education, all kinds of things about that population, right? And what that would help you do is then look at that, and then you can start segmenting. What I would do if I were you, I would take those customers, I would put how much they spent, customer, how much they spent with you, how much you made profit, and then put on there all the demographics of that. And then when you start to filter this into a spreadsheet, you can start to see, all right, well, let me find the ones I made the most profit on, right? What does that demographic look like? Oh, they make X number of money. They do this type of work. Well, now what do you want to do? Perfect. Take that information, target zip codes, demographics that actually meet that population, right? Now you're going to reach the people that you make the most money on versus the people you don't make the most money on. Make sense? I did some research for a tuxedo shop, and they thought, you know, tuxedo shop is very localized, right? Like you would think all of my business is within 5 miles. So when I looked at all, I did what I just told you I did. I took all of their mailing address data, and I looked at it and I said, you know, you realize about 20% of your business is coming from 25 miles outside of your area, right? You realize that, right? And they go, had no idea I had 20% of my business coming from that far out. So what did they do? They changed their marketing plan to grow their business to reach those type of people that were further out. But they wouldn't have known that unless they looked at their information, looked at their data to realize, oh, I didn't realize I had this many people coming from that far away. So I really encourage you to collect this information, look at it, spend some time with it, and really understand what's happening with your consumer, right? Type of work they do. So it's probably difficult. I mean, no one's asking, hey, how much money you make, right? When you're doing your interview, no one's doing that. But you do ask them, what type of work do you do, right? Because part of the getting to know them might be, you know, understanding what type of work they do, because different people like different things. For example, if you're an engineer, right? Hardcore engineer, I mean, you're pretty nerdy and your scope, you're pretty OCD. There's a lot of stuff about that type of person, that type that you would want to know about, versus someone that maybe is a teacher, right? They have a little more open heart, a little more, you know, like they just want to help people. It's different types of people. So if you ask them the type of work they do, you can get a lot of stuff about what you didn't know before. So number one, who they are technically, because the type of work they do, people tend to gravitate towards who they are individually, right? Like I'm a geek. I have some creative stuff, but pretty much I'm a nerd. I'm a data geek. I'm very, you know, everything has to be logical for me, right? Even in music, I have to have some logic around the format. Like it has to go in a logical pattern for me to make sense for me. The other thing you can do is you can actually, oh, I'm an engineer, or oh, I'm a teacher. You can go get general demographics about how much those people make. So you can get a good understanding of their income levels based on the type of work that they do. The last thing is feedback. How many of you collect feedback from your customers? Not just reviews, but feedback from your customers on how you did, or feedback from people that didn't buy from you, right? What about the people that didn't buy from you? Do you get information from them? I would encourage you to look at NPS, which is Net Promoter Score. Basically, Net Promoter Score gives you a range of 0 to 10, and it basically 9 to 10 is promoters, 7 to 8 are kind of passive people, 0 to 6 are what they call detractors. And what you really want is most people to be in the promoter area. But the beautiful thing about Net Promoter I like is you do a couple of follow-up questions. One is so the original question is, how likely are you to recommend? And then you go, what was the reason for that score? So if they gave you a 6, you want to understand, or even if they gave you a 10, why did they give you that score? And then I like to do an additional follow-up question that says, is there anything specifically I can do to improve your experience, right? And that will help you figure out the things that you're doing wrong that you can make a difference on, right? That makes sense? If you don't know about Net Promoter, go read about it. There's lots of information online. It's pretty easy to set up. There are lots of services that offer it. If you need help, feel free to reach out. And then I'll leave you guys with this. So most of you know who Zillow is. Zillow is a company that provides, how much is my house worth online kind of thing. And then they got into the real estate market. So one of the things they offered was the service that they would basically, you put in some information, they give you an offer for your house and go buy it. Well, I don't know if you guys read the article, but they pretty much completely closed down that service, and they laid off 25% of their staff because the algorithm that they built around the housing offer piece was basically only looking at, this is the problem with not going out and looking at other things that are happening in your market. This is a classic example of not looking at other things that are going on. Like, even though I provide data for you guys about the market, you need to pull in other stuff. You need to look at your data internally. Maybe you look at my data, maybe you look at other data. You need to look at your local, economics data of what's happening in your market. You need to pull in multiple sources to make decisions about things. So Zillow had this algorithm that focused simply on the data they knew about the market already, right? Because they do housing estimates for pricing. And then what they thought the market was going to grow to. But what they didn't take into account in specific markets was the cost of getting labor right now specifically, and the cost of getting goods. Because getting goods was very difficult in certain parts of the supply chain is all messed up. It costs a lot more money to get the goods, and it was taking a lot more time to get the goods. Plus they couldn't get labor. So they ended up in multiple markets, specifically, I think Phoenix and Dallas were the two mentioned. They were 90% underwater on the homes that they purchased. 90% underwater, which means they couldn't sell the homes that they purchased for the price that they purchased them for. And I think their total loss for the year was around almost $370 million in home losses because they can't sell the home for more than they paid for it. The other part that really screwed up everything was that they pushed the home prices up and caused panic by other things. That's probably good because now anybody looking to sell their home make a killing, but they pushed home prices up for people that were looking to buy. And so it made it more difficult for people looking to buy. And again, the whole cash offer deal, right? So they come in, hey, we're going to offer you cash for your home. Boom, great, I'm out. And then anybody else that would come in and try to offer something where, oh, look, I want to buy your home. I'll offer you more, but I need to sell my other home first. None of those deals would work, right? Like everybody's like, nope, cash offer, boom, I'm out. And then I'm moving on. So not understanding what was happening in their market around them was extremely painful for them. They lost $400 million a year, right? Just last year. And they ended up laying off a ton of people and closing down that entire product because they didn't read the market. They didn't understand what was happening in their market. So here's my contact information. You guys need help understanding what's going on, let me know. Feel free to reach out. You can actually call or text me on that number below. So what questions do you guys have? That's all I got for you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Shane. I mean, I mentioned the fire hose. There was a lot of information there. As you were mentioning things, I dropped in the chat a lot of links and notes in regards to some of the things that you mentioned. I opened with your contact information. You had a slide for it at the end, and I also closed with your contact information again. So if anybody joined late in the game, his contact information is also in the chat. Pearl's got her hand up, so take it away, Pearl.
Oh yeah. First, I want to say thank you, Shane. That was a lot of amazing, extraordinary information. I know Brandy is excited because she is also a numbers person. So even though she's not on screen, she's my friend. So I know she's excited about all this stuff. My biggest question is for people who aren't data people or haven't really started there, where would you start? Where would you suggest someone should start looking at their data?
So the first thing I would do, like, you talking about your personal data or are you talking about the market?
I'm going to leave you to answer that question
All
because
right,
I'm a business owner. I haven't looked at data before. Where am I starting?
Yeah. So number one, if you have existing business, I would start with your customers. And I would say, number one, look at how much each customer, if you can get some specifics about the customer, like mailing address, that would be awesome. Then align and put on there, how much did they spend with you? And then how much did you actually make on that deal? I mean, if you want to start assigning, I mean, you should be assigning time to tasks that you're doing. If you're not assigning time to tasks, like understanding your actual time spent, because your time is important, you need to start doing that. What are your supply costs, all those things. But at the end, really all you need is how much did they spend with me and how much did I make? And the difference between those two will be how much you actually made in profit. And that's the number one thing I would start right there. And then I would layer on top of that, I would start to look at their zip code specifically and go, and if you can get neighborhood level data, I would do that too. But zip code is pretty easy to get to demographic wise, and start to layer on demographics onto that record. So you go, you have their address, maybe their name if you want to do it like that. I mean, it doesn't matter about their name. It really only matters about their address, actually their zip code. How much did they spend with you? How much did you make? And then I would start layering on, what's the average income in that particular market? What is the average age in that market? What type of work happens in that space? What does the general population look like, right? And then what that'll do is help you understand. Then you can start to filter that and then get a really good handle on, okay, well, like for example, if you just did income and what the average income was for the zip code, if you just did an aggregate, which would be an average of all the averages within there, you could get an average income for the people that do business with you. And then you could go, okay, well, all right, so let's say my average customer makes $80,000 a year. Okay, well, let me figure out where are those people within my market. And so now you can go and look at demographics and go, okay, people that make generally $80,000 a year live in these 5 zip codes. All right, perfect. Now I can take those 5 zip codes and go, I'm going to target those 5 zip codes. And then that's where you could start right there. The second thing I would do is just simply understanding how many weddings take place in your market. That's the size. Remember, we talked about market size. That is the mark. That's the first thing you need to do. And then if you understand, if you're a DJ, like I said to you, 67% of people hire a DJ on average. I think it's different for Phoenix. You'll have to look and see. But if it's more than, let's say it's 70%, okay, so there's 1,000 weddings, only 700 hire a DJ. And if your target is $80,000 a year income people, that's probably a subsegment of that. You need to understand what that is. And then where are those people? And then how much do they spend on entertainment services? And then you can look at multiple pieces of that and then kind of go, that's my target market. That's where I want to go. And that's so now you've gotten down to there. Now you need to understand how many other people are competing for that particular market space and what are they doing? I don't think you should watch your competitors from a perspective of, let me duplicate what they're doing, let me look at their pricing or any of that. What you need to look at your competitors about is, number one, you need to understand how many people are competing against you in the space. That's number one. Number two, I would be reading all of their comments that are not on Wedding Wire or The Knot, because those are all mostly 5-star deals. Go on Yelp, go on Google, go look at what people are really saying about them, find the opportunities in the bad stuff. The bad stuff is where the opportunities are. When people say something bad about you, those are opportunities for other people to make that service better. When someone's saying something, you know, it could be the simplest thing that the person providing the service just doesn't get or just doesn't do. But that is where the opportunities are for you.
Wow, that is a great response. I see there's some things going on in the chat here. I think Dana might have his hand up, but I'm going to pass to Robert because he's officially got his hand in the air. And Dana, and then I'll pass to you. So Robert, please ask your question.
Sure. You kind of alluded to this just a minute ago, Shane, the figure that nationally 67% of weddings have a DJ. I know Wedding Wire did a survey that found that about 16% use live music. So it's a very small niche that we're in.
Yeah.
Where do you find the local figures? I mean, national figures are one thing. How do you find figures for Phoenix, for Arizona?
Yeah, so I'll send Scott a copy of the Phoenix Metro report, and then he can share it with the group. So you guys can get all the stats that you need from that for the Phoenix Metro area. And then if you want zip code level data or whatever, just reach out. I'll give you. I make money by selling data. So if you want zip code level data, you can get access to it. It's only $100 right now for a year. So feel free to take advantage of that. But if I'll send Scott the Phoenix Metro report, and then he can share that with the group, and you guys can look at that, and then you'll get an idea of what. So actually, let me see if I can show you this real fast.
Shane, while you're looking that up, I don't know if it's your SEO, and I don't know if it's the same thing that you're looking to share, but when I did a market size search for weddings, the wedding report from your site came up with a link to that.
Yeah, but that's 2020 for the total market size. I want to show about the DJ stuff.
Okay, excellent.
And entertainment. So let's see. I'll just show you how to read this, so it's helpful for you.
Well, that's a bonus too.
Yeah. All right. So
while you're doing that, thank you so much. This has been a really great presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to help. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again.
You're next, Dana. Hang in there, brother.
Yeah, hang in there. So basically, this is the Phoenix market. So when you buy a membership, you actually can view all this online. The report I'm going to share with you is all this data in a PDF file. But basically, we show how many weddings take place, how much they spend on average. But in the sub menu here, we track 58 different items. So you can see for entertainment, there's 4 things that we track in the entertainment space. So if you were looking at live band, and I know many of you are professionals, but this is the full market. This is not just the professional side of the market. This is everything. People that hire their neighbor, hire their best friend, and they spend $500 to do it. So I mean, I've had conversations about that, and I get where you're coming from on the professional side, but this looks at everything in the market. So basically, the way you would get to the demand, actually, sorry, let me go to a different product that will show the demand part, so make it easier. So when you get into the report, if you look at the full item summary report in the PDF file that we're going to send you, you can get to, here's the number of weddings that basically buy that service. Now this is for 2020, unfortunately, because the way that we do it is it's 1 year prior. So this is all filtered around 2020. If you want to get other years, you'll have to get the total market data, and then you'll have to get the whatever product you're interested in. And I'll show you how to do that too. And you can pull it into a spreadsheet and do your work. But basically, if there's 1,400 weddings in 14,000 weddings in 2020, and only 3,000 hire a live band. So if we did the math, right? So basically it's 3,000 23, right, divided by 14,393, that gives you about 21% in the Phoenix market higher live entertainment, live band. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And for a DJ, let's look at that too. It's different for every market. So for DJ, it's 11,802 divided by 14,393 gives you about 82%, which is great. That's much higher than the national standard.
Yeah.
And
Just
Shane,
looking at
these
live
year-
band and solos and ensembles, that's going to be more than 16% in Phoenix as well. That's good.
Yeah. So.
And Shane, these numbers, they are always a year behind. Is that what I'm guessing?
Yeah, there's always a year behind because you know, you close out the year so this is how it works for collecting data. So beginning of 2022, I'll have all of my cost data that I've collected for 2021. I'll do all my analysis on it, and then I'll publish that for 2021. Then I do all the other facts that we collect data on, which is spending distribution. Spending distribution basically just gives you buckets, a range of spending, and it does it for every single product. So if you looked at DJ, it shows you, you know, how many people spend in different ranges within those markets, and it shows you how many weddings.
And the wedding report that you provide, is it, you just do it once a year, or is it?
Yeah, we do it once a year. So it takes about 3 to 6 months to do a full update of data. And then obviously with COVID, I did a couple of updates because things were changing.
Mhm.
So next year, probably we'll just do one update. It'll probably we'll do the initial cost. The spending data will happen like February, March. Some of these other facts will get updated between March, April, May, and then number of weddings will get updated in like June, July timeframe, because states are usually behind on publishing data. I don't know if you guys know this, but you know, the state number is actually the real number for the entire state. And if you get a license in Maricopa County, for example, I can get married anywhere within the state, but I have to submit my license back to Maricopa County because that's where I got it issued. So same thing with Tucson. So if I get my license in Tucson, Pima County, then I'd have to submit it back to Pima County, but I could go get married in Sedona or Prescott or Grand Canyon, anywhere in the state, doesn't matter. But that's how that works. So what we try to do is we try to account for like how many people travel into a market versus how many people actually originate from that market. If you notice, like when you select the metro area, like Phoenix here, about 14% of people actually travel into this market, and then the rest originate. So we have this thing called travel distance, which basically tries to estimate approximately how many people travel into Phoenix to get married and how many people originate within that market. So the cool thing about that is, if you go back to the trend stuff, the Google trend stuff I told you, if you know that 2,000 people travel into this market, well, where are they coming from? Well, it's the places that I just showed you, right? If you do the trend stuff. So if you start to market those spots, you're actually probably going to get some business for people traveling in to get married.
Interesting. Okay, you're doing a great job of answering my questions. So you mentioned the Phoenix market. Do you also cover places like Surprise? Because I happen to know Dana, who's a visitor to us today, has a videography service, and he has a question, and he's in Surprise.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. When you select a market, so if you get the membership and you select the market, basically you can filter by county. Well, county in Phoenix is 2. The Phoenix Metro makes up 2 counties. You know, the weird thing about Arizona or the West is that most metropolitans are in 1 county. But if you look at zip codes, you can see here's all the zip codes for the Phoenix market, and then you can actually drill into the zip code. So for zip code data, we only show 1 year because there's literally 900 zip code changes in a year. No way I'm doing year-over-year estimates. But you can get into cities here. So if it's filtered by zip code, so you can get in. I think, what's the zip code for Surprise? Anybody know?
You're muted, Dana.
Oh, here we go. There are 2 zip codes for the Surprise market that we collect data on, and there's literally 14 weddings that take place in that space.
Mhm.
There might be more, but this is the estimate based on, you know, a lot of different things, but that's pretty much what we estimate.
And Dana, did you have a question or were you just kind of moving around?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, and thank you, Shane, for this information. You mentioned earlier that the about the surge, you know, kind of the catch up of in the industry because of COVID.
Yeah.
How strong of a sense do you feel like that is just a catch up, or if the levels will come back up to what they were?
It's completely just a catch up. In fact, let me just show you. So let me show you what that looks like from a perspective, right? So like here's weddings over the years. So as you can see, like this was COVID year, right? And this is this year. That's next year. So we think there's about 2.5 million weddings for next year. And then as you can see, it's going to kind of like come down like this. If we go back and look at the Phoenix market, let's go back and look at Phoenix Metro. And we look at weddings. So here's what here's kind of what we're seeing for the Phoenix. So it's similar. I don't think you're going to get back. You're probably going to get back to a normal range probably after 2025. So they'll, you know, as you can see, Phoenix was on the rise a little bit because there's a lot of people moving to Phoenix, right? A lot of people from California and other places kind of moving into the Phoenix area. But obviously dropped off quite a bit. But here's what we're seeing for 2021, and then next year is going to be probably about this. And then it will slow down or come down. And I think you'll probably get around 27 when it all settles down. You're going to be roughly about 27 for at least the next 5 to 10 years. And then as the population for Gen Z, Gen X, or what is the new generation? Whatever the new generation is.
Why not?
Gen X, I'm sorry. The new generation, the population drops off significantly. So there'll be a lot less people in the pool. So we think those numbers will drop a lot more, but anyways.
So Brandy wants to know where she can get this report, but I'm assuming she gets it through you, correct?
Yeah, so I'm going to give this report specifically to Scott. He's going to share with the group. And then if you guys want actually, so let me show you a couple things. So once you get into the market, you can actually do data downloads. So you can download the full PDF for this market, which I'm going to do and send to Scott. So basically when you click on that, it basically generates a PDF file and gets it to you. And if you go into like data download section, you can actually download zip code level data. And then like, let's say you were interested in, you know, DJ service, entertainment, live band, you just select this, select zip codes, boom, download this file, and it will give you all the zip code level data for that market. Here you go. So here's all the zip codes. Here's how many weddings take place for that particular service. Here's how much they spend on average in total sales. This is really just this times this. So if you're interested in so I also told you we offer spending ranges. So if you're looking at like, I think I showed you DJ, but if you're looking at live band entertainment, you can see that about 13% of people spend more than $3,000. So that's about 384 weddings, right? 1.7 million. So you can get to this data also too by going to the data download section. And then you go down to spending distribution, and then you can select the zip codes, and you can go, oh, let me get going too fast here. Let me get that data, download that, and then it's building the file. So you open this up, and then one of the things you can do is you can go, okay, and if you're an Excel person, if you're not, you can just set up a filter, and then you can go, I only want to filter by this 3,000 bucket plus, and then you can kind of sort by weddings, largest to smallest, and you can kind of get an idea. This is total weddings, And this is the, how many weddings actually take place for that particular bucket, right? So this thing. So let's say, oh, well, maybe I want to do this plus this, right? And then you can kind of get an idea. All right, well, now there's, you know, for this zip code, you can also filter by zip codes, whatever you want to do. You can get to this data and it shows you how many weddings are in that space. Make sense?
Are the zip codes based on the home address of the couple or where the wedding occurs?
It's both combination, because remember I told you we try to estimate how many people travel into the zip code and how many people originate. So it's based on both.
Wow.
If you look at, I think I have something called travel distance. If you look at the travel distance, you can kind of get an estimate of, and if you do it by zip code, you can kind of get an estimate of how many people, this is total weddings. Basically total number of weddings that take place in a zip code, and then how many people originate from the zip code versus travel into the zip code. So we're trying to estimate, we estimate that as well. So like this zip code here, you can see, you know, almost all of these are travel into. Does that make sense?
Yep. Makes sense to those who follow the numbers. I love Pearl's pound truth. Hashtag. Thank you, Shane. Anyone who is serious about managing the numbers in their business, this information is a gold mine. And I'm stealing Brandy's comment there, but I highly recommend that you reach out to Shane, find out more about how he can provide you with numbers in your area, Prescott, Surprise, Mesa, but you're just Arizona. Is that correct, Shane? You're not doing California or Nevada?
We do everything. I mean, I have data for all markets in the entire US.
Wow, that's outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Only
great.
US level data. It's not anything outside the US, but
None of my Canadian friends, eh?
won't work for them. Sorry. Well, I can tell you this, Canadian spending is about the same as the US, but there's only about 150,000 weddings that take place in Canada a year. So
Wow.
that's it.
Wow. I won't tell them that. They'll be disappointed.
Same thing with Australia. It's about 100,000 weddings that take place in Australia. Spending is about the same as the US, maybe a little bit less. The most weddings in the world take place in China. There's about 10 million weddings a year, but you know, the spend on wedding in China is really small. The average household income related to US dollars is about $5,000 so a year.
Wow.
So not a lot.
Well, I have to tell you, look, the room stayed. We normally end at 10, it's 10:21, and almost everybody who showed up is still here. So thank you. Your contact information is there. If anybody has any questions, Shane will be happy to answer them for you privately. And Brandy's saying something about pay the $97. Okay, I agree, what she said.
Yeah.
On behalf of Event Ensemble, we say thank you, Shane, and we wish you all a successful celebration wherever
Thanks,
you
guys.
may be.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And have a good one, guys.